Time to take a look at another fancy Forge World knight. Today we'll be taking a look at the knight Magaera. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where we're looking to get the most out of our miniatures on the battlefield. Today we'll be returning to our look at the Forge World knights, with another rare relic knight from the Horus Heresy. The knight Magaera is one of the most advanced and rarest of the questoris pattern knights. These guys are most typically deployed as shock assault units for the Knight Lance, striding into battle with their lightning cannons and phased plasma fusils to wherever the resistance is strongest. In this review we'll take a look at its datasheet, any obvious buffs, combos and synergies, and how I would run one on the battlefield. So here we have the most recent version of the Questor Magaera's datasheet available to download free from the Forge World website. It is of course a Lord of War choice for Codex Imperial knights, and both in points and in real money it will cost more than its regular questoris brethren, at 500 points and £131 respectively. Though I have to admit you do get a very snazzy looking model for this. So what do these points on the battlefield buy you? Firstly, they have the exact same profile as a regular questoris knight. No changes at all, standard 12 movement, weapon skill and ballistic skill 3 that degrade, strength 8, toughness 8, 24 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 9 and a 3-up save. They have the same 5-up invul save as well. The Magaera differs only in terms of its armament and one special rule. The Magaera is armed with a lightning cannon, a phased plasma fusel, a Reaper chainsword and titanic feet, and it can choose to swap out that Reaper chainsword with a Hecaton siege claw with a twin rad cleanser for an additional 25 points. Unlike the regular Codex questoris patterns, you can't choose to add a carapace mounted weapon option to this knight. Now its armament is pretty nasty, as you would hope for a 500 point at least critter. That lightning cannon has a very good all-round profile, its range 48 inches, is heavy 6, strength 7, AP-2 and flat damage 3, but an unmodified roll of 6 to hit made for this attack scores an additional 2 hits on its target, so typically you're going to be expecting around about 6 hits out of this weapon. Even if we ignored the strength 7, which is a nice bonus against toughness 6 and toughness 7, then it still comes out ahead of the Avenger Gatling cannon when you're firing at heavily armoured multi-wound targets, but it probably won't do you quite as well when you're firing at troops, as the Avenger Gatling cannon will get you an average of 8 hits compared with 6 hits for this one. The fact that you get those additional hits on an unmodified roll of 6 is pretty interesting as well. Like Endless Fury, it means that it's particularly good at shooting anything with -1 to hit modifiers, as a decent part of its standard damage output just naturally comes from any hit rolls of 6 in the first place. So it's a good standard all-round weapon. The phased plasma fusel has a interesting profile as well. Its range is 24 inches, its rapid fire 2, strength 7, AP-3 and flat damage 2. So it's sort of like a plasma gun that doesn't overheat, but only has strength 7. Again, a good general purpose weapon, enough shots to put the hurt on infantry, but enough strength and damage to put damage into tanks. If you do choose to take the Hecaton Siege Claw and its built-in dual rad cleanser, then you get some further upgrades. The Hecaton Siege Claw essentially has the same profile as a Thunderstrike Gauntlet, a ×2 AP-4 weapon that hits on a -1 to hit, but it trades out the special rule for essentially throwing a tank and causing some mortal wounds on a nearby unit for a +2 damage against vehicles or titanic units, which I would say is a slight upgrade on the standard Thunderstrike. That twin rad cleanser, on the other hand, is a really solid little upgrade. It's got a range of 9, its assault 2d6 and it auto hits its target, a strength of 2 and damage 3, but unless you're targeting a vehicle or a titanic unit, then it wounds on a 2-up anyway. Rad cleansers are really interesting little weapons, having flat damage 3 that even if you're wounding on a 6, it'll have a reasonable chance of putting some hurt onto vehicles, and it's pretty much guaranteed to make a slew of saves onto infantry. I'd say the prime targets for this thing are any low save multi-wound models that aren't vehicle or titanic, particularly things like Tyrannid monstrous creatures or heavy infantry, or maybe chaos greater demons. The 9-inch range is somewhat limiting, meaning that between the rad cleanser and the plasma fusel you're really going to be wanting to get this guy close to get full value out of all of those guns. Finally, the special rule this model has in addition to regular knight special rules is the Imperial Prey Sight, which means when you're resolving an attack made By the Knight Magaera, the target doesn't receive any benefit to its saving throw from being in cover, and this really is a solid advantage over some of the other questoris pattern knights, as cover saves are pretty abundant, particularly with marines being some of the top dogs right now, and elite infantry being very good in cover, and some armies running around with the stealthy trait. This is a really solid boost to that main lightning cannon armament, and certainly doesn't hurt on the other guns either. So overall, the Knight Magaera is a fairly expensive questoris pattern knight, with a solid all-round main cannon that ignores cover, some bonus plasma shots that reward you for being up close, and if you take the Siege Claw and Rad Cleanser, it becomes particularly good at purging infantry nearby, and is even nastier when you're attacking vehicles. So let's have a chat about some of the obvious buffs and synergies that we can do with this guy. First of all, let's briefly mention household choice. In general, all of the Questor Imperialis ones will give you various bonuses to assault phase, which could be useful for putting that Hecaton Siege Claw to good work, particularly House Mortan's benefit for getting you to hit back on a 3 again rather than a 4, if you're going to be using that Siege Claw. Over on the Mechanicus side, Raven could help you get up close, particularly if combined with full tilt for a very fast moving assault threat. Tyrannus will give you that very nice 6-up feel no pain type save and the option to maybe get back up. Crass can get you the Headsman's Mark, which is always great against vehicles. I mean, who doesn't like a damage 4 or 5 lightning cannon? And can also help out in melee as well. And Volker could be a good choice with their saturation bombardment and re-rolling wands, as this is a knight that's usually going to want to get close to its target. In terms of Warlord traits and relics, the usual good ones apply. Iron Bulwark to increase his invul save to a 4-up is great, particularly as his invul save applies in close combat as well. Knight Seneschal for an extra attack on the charge, and Landstrider, particularly if you're combining it with full tilt, are decent shouts as well. In terms of stratagems, being a questoris pattern means that he has a lot of access to most of the common stratagems, particularly your bread and butter ones such as Machine Spirit Resurgent, Rotate Ion Shields and things. Also full tilt for advancing and charging as we've mentioned already. This guy can use Noble Sacrifice to try and detonate himself when he dies, which is one of my favourite stratagems, and if you're Questor Imperialis, then the 2 command point stratagem to fight when he dies is also a solid pick. In terms of relics, the Armour of Sainted Ion is a decent option, particularly as it isn't competing with Sanctuary for this guy, as his Ionic Flare Shield applies in both melee and against ranged attacks. So how would I use this guy on the battlefield? Firstly, I think if we are going for the Knight Magaera, I would probably run him with the Hecaton Siege Claw and Twin Rad Cleanser. For 25 points, these things seem solid upgrades to me, and I'd argue are probably worth it over the Reaper Chainsword at that points cost. On the field of battle, as is normal for knights that can both shoot and do melee quite well, the main thing that you'd need to do is to try and counter the enemy's deployment and force your opponent's army to fight you on your terms. If you're facing a mainly melee list, you can wait for them to come to you while unloading lightning cannon shots. If you're facing a mainly ranged list, then by all means throw him right up into the grill of the enemy to start stomping on them with Titanic Feet and cleansing them with the Rad Cleanser. And if you know you're going second in general, then you can just try and outrange the opponent's heavy weapons and move into range yourself when it's your turn. I do think though that at some point in the battle this guy is going to need to get up close to have the best chance of getting out the big points investment that you've made in him. The lightning cannon's a solid option, but it just really isn't worth the points over the regular questoris pattern. All by itself, you need to be getting use out of the Plasma Fuse or Rad Cleanser and Hecaton Claw, plus that 5-up invul save in close combat. Honestly, if this guy is just going to be used as a shooty knight, you would have been much better taking a Crusader with 2 primary weapons. So at some point in the battle you are going to want to get into close combat with this guy, and particularly so with enemy vehicles or Titanics to get the most out of that Siege Claw. All the standard knight tactics will apply with him, as he's a model that can get the most out of each phase by moving, shooting, charging, falling back, shooting and charging again. When he dies, I'd certainly consider noble self-sacrifice to blow him up, and hopefully shower the enemy in mortal wounds. So how does this guy stack up against the competition then? He's certainly an interesting choice, as he probably most directly compares with something like a Knight Warden, while having some more interesting shooting options and potentially better in close combat against vehicles. In all honesty, his only real problem is his very high price tag. If you are going Siege Claw and Rad Cleanser, then this guy is almost 120 points more than a Warden, for having the exact same defensive profile, and only moderately better shooting for all of that investment. I'm afraid I probably wouldn't recommend this guy for competitive tournament type events. You would pretty much certainly be better off with either a Warden, particularly with Endless Fury, or perhaps a Knight Crusader. That being said, this guy is still a fun and interesting option, and will likely hold its own against a lot of the field you're likely to see in more casual play. A Knight is always a scary thing to have on the battlefield after all. I think if Games Workshop were to readdress this guy, he should probably have a pretty decent points drop. I'd say probably something along the lines of 450 points would be about right for him, but maybe let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Either way, it's a very fun model, both rules-wise and really snazzy looking. If I've misunderstood any rules at all, or you have any other insights on how to field this guy on the field of battle, please let me know, and feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you're interested in more reviews like this. I'll be keeping up my semi-regular coverage of Forge World Knights. Feel free to support my Patreon if you are finding my videos useful, and you'd like to reward the channel for the work put in. Again, thank you very much for listening. I'll hope to see you guys next time.